Hey everybody, welcome to week 6, our last week of our online teaching. And this week we're going to change it up a little bit and we're going to do a listening test. Now, before you lose your minds and think, oh my God, the most important thing for you to understand about this test is this is just a practice. This is going to be, for some of you, it's going to be an introduction to what is going to be part of your grade. Part of your grade is going to be listening test, very, very similar to this test. But this is just a practice, and we will do another practice, okay? So don't worry about it. So what I mean is that today, what I want you to do is to not freak out, don't worry about it. I just want you to listen and do your best. This is not about you getting the correct answers, because I'm not going to give you a grade for this. This is just about you and me evaluating your listening skills for this particular kind of test. Now, as you'll see, what we're going to do is what's called a TOEFL ITP test. This is very similar. This is a different version of the TOEFL test. This is often used for entrance into, for example, Mahidol Demonstration School. And various other schools and agencies will use this particular test. You've heard of the TOEFL and TOEIC and IELTS and SAT and other English language tests. But this particular one is a slightly different format, but very, very similar to if you've taken the CUTEP test in the past, the listening part, as some of you have. So right now, I'm just going to give you an introduction to it, quick introduction. And then after I finish with my introduction, you are going to take the test, okay? The test will take you about 35 minutes. What's going to happen is you're going to hear the entire test up on the screen. You will see there's actually examples, and they will give you one example before each of the 3 sections, okay? So it's important that you pay attention to those examples. I'm not going to go into great detail over them before you take the test, because what I want to do, again, is we're going to use this kind of to evaluate where you're at right now. And then, of course, when we get into class, when we're in person, we can interact with each other more. I want you to ask me any questions you want about it, okay? That's very important. So don't worry about it too much. Just see how it goes, okay? Again, there's not going to be a mark for this. This is not going to be part of your 15 points for the online teaching, okay? So let me just give you a quick brief overview. This will be, again, familiar to those of you who have taken the CUTEP listening test. Those of you who have not, the CUTEP listening tests are what we'll be using in class for your listening grade, which you'll be taking 2, which will be a total of 40% of your grade. So this will be a preview of that. For those of you who have taken it before, what you should know mostly about this is that this is longer. This one's going to be longer than the CUTEP test. So let's talk about why it's longer and what it entails. So you see, one I told you, you see on the screen, it's practice test. Again, don't worry about it, just do your best. And how it goes is simply, there's 3 parts. Part A is 30 questions. Now, normally on a CUTEP test, it's 15 questions. So that's the biggest difference. But it's exactly the same as Part A of the CUTEP test. What you have is 2 speakers, which is a dialogue, okay? Dialogue, 2 people speaking. And Part B is also a dialogue, and Part C is a monologue, mono, 1, meaning 1 person is speaking. For Part A, again, it's 30 questions. This is a short conversation, as I've written in quotations on the document you see in front of you. Basically, it's just one person will say something, and the other person will say something, and that's it. and then you're going to hear a question about the conversation, quote unquote conversation. It's not really a conversation. The important thing is to note on this test is that you will not see the questions, okay? You won't see the questions on your paper. You will only see the possible answers. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is I'm going to encourage you, and it's okay for you to take a little time and look at the answers before you start hearing the questions, so you can use this to get a general idea of what you're going to be hearing. Now, specifically for part A, the important thing to note is that there'll be two speakers. 95% of the time, it's a male and a female, and that is so you can distinguish between their voices easier as non-native speakers. And the little kind of clue hint for what you want to do on this test is that you will hear somebody will say something, for example, okay, hey, I'm going to go to the store. And the second person will say, oh, will you pick me up some Coke and some chips? And what will happen is then you will hear a question. What did the second speaker, what did the man ask? Okay, the second speaker was a man. Now, what you want to remember here, and it's okay to do this, is focus on the second speaker. The question will always revolve around the second speaker, and the second speaker will give the answer. The answer will come from the second speaker. Of course, pay attention to the first thing that's said, but it's okay to focus more on the second thing that is said, because that's where the question will come from, and that's where the answer will also come from. Now, on this test, they'll use the word sometimes, what did the speaker imply? What was inferred? What did he mean? Okay, like that. So that just means, what did they say, but they didn't directly say it? Okay, you'll see after you've heard a couple of examples, and then once you've taken a few, listened to a few questions on the test. So again, part A, 30 questions, boom, boom, statement, and then you'll hear the question, okay? You won't see it on the paper. That's gonna be on your screen. And just pick A, B, C, or D, which one you think is correct, okay? Pretty simple. And let's see how it goes. Now, part B is only going to be 8 questions. This is the same size as normally for part B on the CU TEP test. The only difference is this is an actual conversation. So 2 people will be discussing certain things. Now, what you'll notice is very often is that the people speaking are students, and usually university students. So quite often these talks will be about things that are going on in their lives, in classes, things they do when they're outside of school, things like that. And also it centers around what you would call American English, not English English. So the few different uses of words, and definitely intonation and pronunciation on some words. But the vocabulary that's within the conversation will kind of use words, you know, common words like roommate and things like that. But we will discuss that later when we go over the answers. So these are longer conversations, about a minute or so long. And here you will have 2 conversations, and there'll be 4 questions about each conversation. Okay, so that's part B. And then we have part C, which is going to be 12 questions, and there's going to be 3 talks. Now again, part C is 1 speaker, or what's called a monologue. This is going to be usually professors or somebody, a lecturer giving a talk about, you know, it could be anything, you know, a particular animal, something about the environment, or very often, more likely, it will be a lecturer or a professor at a university discussing something with this class. So this will be a little bit longer, and maybe about, these ones are actually short for this test. They're about no longer than like a minute each, okay? And same thing, you're gonna have 4 questions for each of the 3 talks in part C. and you'll have a chance to look at the answers before you actually hear it. I encourage you to do that. Okay, so let's get to it. And now that we've finished a brief introduction to the test, I want you to open up. I put an answer sheet in here for you. You can copy that or make your own, or I'm pretty sure you will be able to write your answers on the actual pages, and you can turn those in, okay? So what I want you to do now is take the test, circle your answers, all the correct answers, send it in to me, and then once you finish that, open up the next video, and then we will go from there and continue to talk about the test, okay? So go ahead and start your test right now, and I'll see you after you finish the test. Okay, so you finished the test, and now you're thinking, oh my God, that was horrible. Okay, well, here's the good news. Is again, remember I told you this is just a practice, and what I want you to do now is go ahead, get out your answer sheet, look over the answers, and now I'm going to give you the answers to the test and explain everything to you and actually read the entire dialogue for every question. So we're going to start off with section A, which was the 30 short conversations. I'm going to read it, give you the answer, and a quick explanation for why that was the answer, okay? This is the same thing we'll do in class in person once we're back under normal circumstances, back in the classroom, okay? So I hope you follow along, and feel free to ask me any questions here or online about this, or hold on to your questions until we're actually so we can interact with each other in the class starting July 1st. Okay, so here we go. So we have it up on the screen, and I will be switching the screens. I might have a little trouble doing that. I hope not. But so we're looking at number 1, okay? And number 1 was a man said, look, I'm sorry to bother you about this, but that music's really loud. And the woman said, I didn't realize you could hear it. The question was, what will the woman probably do? And of course, the answer was C, play the music more softly. This is because the woman said, I didn't realize you can hear it. She meant realize she didn't know that the music she was playing was very loud. So now that she knows that, she's going to turn it down. Number 2 was a man, and a man said, George is going to work in New York for the summer. And the woman said, can he do that and go to summer school? And the question was, what does the woman imply about George? The answer was B, he may have difficulty working and studying at the same time. That's because she said, can he do that and go to summer school? She's saying, 1, it's hard to work. 2, it's hard to go to school. Both of those things together might be very difficult. So is he going to be able to do it? I had to do it, and it was a nightmare. It was very difficult. So if you're lucky enough to not have to work and go to school, good for you. Number 3 was a woman, and she said, shouldn't someone pick up the clothes from the cleaners? And the man said, don't look at me. Well, what was the answer? B, he doesn't intend to get the clothes. Because she was saying, hey, who's going to pick them up? And then when he says, don't look at me, he means, don't ask me. You know, just, I'm not here. Okay? So, not a nice guy, but, you know, what are you going to do? Okay, so now let's move on to the next page, and let's see, and let's fix everything here so you can see all of the page. Okay, there we go. So number 4, a woman said, congratulations, I understand you got a job. When do you start work? And the man said, "You must be thinking of someone else. I'm still waiting to hear." So what did he mean by that? He meant C, the woman was mistaken. Well, mistaken wrong. She was talking about he got a new job, and he was saying, no, that's somebody else. I'm still waiting to hear if I got a job. Number 5 was a woman said, "Are you sure you corrected all the typing errors? You want to make a good impression." And the man said, "I better read through the paper again." Question, what is the man going to do? And the answer is D, check the paper for mistakes. Because he said, what, I'm going to read through it again. That means I'm going to look at it again. Why? And make sure that it's completely correct before it turns. It's probably a resume or maybe a essay or something. Number 6, a man said, "I think the whole class is going on the field trip next Friday." And the woman said, "I'm not so sure. Not everyone has paid the transportation fee." Question, what does the woman imply? And the answer is C, some people may not go on the trip. And this is because he said the whole class, that means everybody. And she said, "I'm not so sure." That means, well, I disagree with you. And not everyone has paid the fee. So obviously, if you don't pay the fee, you can't go on the trip. So maybe everybody's not going. Number 7 was a woman. She said, "Could you bring my calculator back? I need it to do my math homework tonight." Okay, people use calculators anymore? You guys use your phones, right? And the man said, "I don't know how to put this, but I dropped it and now the on button doesn't light up." Question, what is the man's problem? Well, C, he broke something the woman lent him, right? What does he say? Well, something, he dropped it, now it's not working properly. And lent, okay, past tense of the word lend. So she said, "Hey, you can," and he borrowed the calculator, that's the opposite of lend, but he dropped it on the floor, and now it doesn't work, and so he's in trouble. So moving on to number 8, there's 2 women on number 8. So the first woman said, "Look at this note from the landlord." And the second woman said, "What? We can't afford another $20 a month." Question, what are the speakers talking about? Now, the interesting about this is one part of this test, and the test you will take in the future, is that you need to have the ability to convert. They are always going to talk in dollars, meaning US dollars. So in your mind, you want to be able to convert that into baht. Roughly right now, about 30 baht to $1. So they're talking about $20, so about 600 more baht a month. Landlord is the person who owns your house or an apartment or even possibly a condo that you live in, and you pay them rent, okay? The lord of the land is where the word comes from. Meaning the Lord means you overlook everything, okay? And when they're talking about, obviously their rent is being raised, and she's saying, what are they talking about? A rent increase, C, okay? Okay, I hope you can hear me. I'm gonna do a little construction here. So moving on to number 9. A woman said, Janet said she's coming to my graduation. And the man said, but she has to work that week, doesn't she? Question, what does the man imply about Janet? And remember, I told you they'll use the words imply or infer, okay? So he said again, but she has to work that week, doesn't she? The week of graduation. So what is the answer? A, she might not be able to attend the ceremony. Now don't forget, when you have a graduation, they're always going to call it a graduation ceremony, a wedding ceremony. Okay, ceremony is attached to many different words. So he said, hey, she's gonna come, right? And then he said, well, she has to work. The reality is, when you have a job, very often things are going to come up, and because of that job, you can't just say, hey boss, I'm not coming to work today, I got a wedding to go to. You have to go in and say, can I miss work because I want to go to this wedding or whatever? And usually they'll say no. So that's why she might not be able to attend. Number 10, a woman said, why is it that whenever I open my mailbox lately, I pull out letters addressed to you? And she's talking to a man. Now what's happening is this man must be staying with her while he's looking for another place to live. And he said, until I find a new apartment, I'm having the post office forward my mail to your place. Question, what is happening to the man's letters? The answer is B, they're being sent to the woman's address. Because what happens when you move, you have to give what's called a temporary address. And that's so your mail keeps coming because the post office, or you can put a hold on it, but usually people forward it. So obviously he's staying at this woman's house and he told the post office, hey, send my mail here. So the woman's going like, you get a lot of mail. You know, she sounds kind of irritated, I don't know. But they must be friends, so she said okay, right? So why is she irritated? But hey, people, you never know. Okay, hammering away. Number 11 was a man said, have you seen Jim around? We're supposed to play tennis. And the woman said, well, his racket's here on the table. Question, what does the woman imply about Jim? Well, the answer is A, he's probably nearby. Because, well, you know, as far as I know, tennis rackets don't have legs and they can't walk places by themselves. So since his racket is there, probably he brought it there, and that means he's somewhere around. Number 12, the woman says, how did the discussion on inflation go? And the man says, I didn't think I had much to say, but it lasted over an hour. Question, what does the man mean? Now you see, he said, I didn't think I had much to say. So obviously he's the man doing the talking. And the answer for number 12 is D, he expected the discussion to be shorter. It was a discussion he was leading. He was giving a talk about something. Maybe he just thought he didn't have a long speech or anything, and he just thought, I'm just going to talk off the top of my head. And then he thought, I'm not going to say much. And then he ended up talking a lot, probably like some of your teachers, myself included. Okay, but we'll try to fix that. Number 13 was a man, and he said, I can't remember the due date for our final paper. See, again, it's about, you know, a test, university. And the woman said, I think it's the 12th, but the professor said not to wait until the last minute to hand it in. Question, what did the professor suggest the students do? Okay, and the answer is C, finish their assignment early. And this is what all of us teachers will tell you. Because what do they do? Whoa! That wasn't me. Procrastinate. They're saying don't wait to the last minute. Wait to the last minute means do it like the night before it's due. Definitely not me. So again, try not to do that also in real life. Number 14 is about me, if you remember. The man says, Gary says he's planning to take 2 extra courses this term. And the woman says, he's got to be out of his mind. Question, what does the woman imply about Gary? Well, the answer, of course, for number 14 is C, he's making a bad decision. Yes, I've made a few bad decisions in my life. And it's about this question centers around the idea of this phrase, out of his mind. Okay, out of his mind is a semi-polite way to say crazy. Okay, so no, I'm not out of my mind. Don't you dare think that. Not usually, not usually. Okay, number 15, a woman said, I'm stopping at the museum shop. It's got some inexpensive prints that I would make good gifts. And the man says, especially if you're a modern art lover. The question, what does the man mean? And we see that the answer for that is D. People who enjoy modern art would like the prints. Why did he say that? She said inexpensive prints and it would be good gifts, meaning people will like them. And then he says, especially if you're a modern art lover. So he's agreeing with her completely. Okay. Number 16 was a man said, weren't you trying to get us all together for a picnic this weekend? And the woman says, it never really got off the ground. Question, what does the woman say about the picnic? Okay, the answer for 16 is A, she wasn't able to organize it. Now you know this answer comes from a phrase that she used, but you might not understand it. Never really got off the ground. It's an analogy relating to, you could probably the best to say like an airplane. Okay, it's a bad thing if an airplane ever gets off the ground, meaning it didn't work, something went wrong. Okay, so that's what that means. That thing didn't happen. Okay, so let's move on to the next page, and we'll move on to number 17. Let's hope I could find the correct page, and there it is. And let's change our view so we can see everything, and there we go. Okay, number 17, excuse me. Number 17 was a woman said, this intro to lit class wasn't supposed to be hard. And the man says, but it sure turned out to be, didn't it? Question, what does the man think about the class? So of course the answer was D, it's quite difficult. Because she said it wasn't supposed to be hard, but she's implying, but it was hard. And then he's saying it did turn out to be. And then she used the question tag, something you guys have heard before, and we'll hear again probably in your grammar classes. Didn't it? Meaning, yeah, it was hard. Okay, it was difficult. Number 18 was man said, I ought to call Joan and tell her about the meeting this afternoon. And the woman said, why bother? You'll see her at lunch. Question, what does the woman suggest the man do? And the answer, of course, is B, tell Joan about the meeting at lunch. She's saying, look, you don't have to tell her now because you're going to see her like in 5 minutes. So what's the point? Okay, just tell her later. Number 19 was the man says, what's happening with the library? Aren't they adding a new wing? And the woman said, the construction crew's just finishing up. Question, what does the woman mean? And she means D, the addition will be completed soon. Completed soon is when she says just finishing up. That means completed in the very near future, like hopefully all the stuff here at school. Number 20, a man said, they said the train won't arrive until 9. And the woman says, I guess that boils down to another delay in our schedule. Question, what does the woman mean? And the answer was C, they're going to be delayed again. This is because she says it boils down to another delay in our schedule. It means that was a delay and there's going to be another one. Okay. Number 21, a man said, don't forget to put your umbrella in the car. And she said, oh, it's just overcast. Question, what does the woman imply? And this is A, she doesn't need an umbrella. This is based on the word overcast. Overcast is like you can't see out the window, but right now it's kind of overcast. It's cloudy, but doesn't really look like it's necessarily going to rain. He's saying, there's clouds, it's going to rain. She's saying, nah, it's just overcast, it's not going to rain. Number 22, a woman said, I'm taking my roommate out for her birthday tonight, to that fancy new restaurant. And the man said, you can't go like that, you better change. Question, what does the man suggest the woman do? And the answer is D, wear different clothes. When it says a fancy restaurant, that means you got to wear nicer clothes. You can't go in a tank top and shorts and flip-flops. and she must be wearing very casual clothes. So he's saying, you can't go like that means, change your clothes, it won't work. 23, a woman said, didn't Miriam go shopping with you yesterday? And the man says, even if she hadn't done a lot of studying, she would have preferred to stay at home. Question, what does the man imply about Miriam? And the answer is A, she doesn't like to go shopping. They're saying, hey, she didn't go shopping with me because even she stayed home to study, but even if she didn't have to study, she doesn't really like going shopping, so she wouldn't have gone. Number 24 was a man said, I'm just going to give up playing table tennis. I lost again today. And the woman says, just because you lost, is that any reason to quit? And the question is, what does the woman suggest the man do? And that means C, reconsider his decision. Reconsider means to think again. Okay, think about it again. And she's saying basically what I would tell you about anything. Just because you don't, succeed the very first time you do something doesn't mean you quit that thing. Okay, so she's saying, hey, don't do that. Think about it. Number 25, a woman says, has Sally ever missed coming to one of our parties? And the man says, only once or twice at the most. Question, what does the man say about Sally? And the answer is C, she comes to most of their parties, because they're saying only once or twice and they must have a lot of parties. And so she's always there, but she's not here now. It's very strange. Number 26, a woman said, would you like to come mountain climbing with us? And the man says, thanks, but that's the last thing in the world I want to do. Question, what does the man mean? He means, of course, D, he isn't interested in going. The last thing, about the expression, the last thing I'd want to do, this means that, for me, the last thing I want to do is go to the dentist. Okay, I'd rather, have somebody rip all my hair out or something. So mountain climbing, no chance. He has, he's probably scared to do it. So he's like, no. You couldn't make me do it if you tried. Number 27, the man says, what have they decided to call the stadium? And the woman says, no one's come up with anything yet. Question, what does the woman say about the stadium? And the answer, of course, is B, a good name hasn't been found for it yet. No one has come up with anything. Come up with anything means thought about something. 28, a woman said, can you come to connect with me to the concert with me this weekend, or do you have to prepare for exams? And the man says, I still have a lot to do, but maybe a break would do me good. What will the man probably do? Okay, so of course, D, he's going to go to the concert with the woman. Yeah, he said he's got a lot to do, but the break would do him good. This is about the word but. But is always almost not a contradiction, but whatever comes before the but, after the but will be the opposite. Okay? I wanted to play football today, but it's raining, so we can't play football. It goes negative, positive, or positive, negative. Okay? We'll talk more about that when we go over another test. Okay? Number 29, the woman said, I hear you got lost on your way to the hotel. And the man said, I don't know how I did it. I've been there a million times. Question, what does the man mean? Well, of course, A, he's surprised he couldn't find the hotel. Why? Because he knows the place. It'd be like me getting lost going to Podison or something, right? I've been here a million times, it seems like it. And probably you too. You wouldn't get lost. But, he doesn't understand why I get lost. I have a few ideas maybe why I got lost, but I won't talk about that. And the last one, number 30. Have you seen this postcard from Ron? He's in Florida. And the woman says, oh, so he was able to get time off. Question, what had the woman assumed about Ron? And of course, the answer is B, he wouldn't be able to take a vacation. So he was planning on going to Florida, but she said I didn't think he was able to get time off. What she meant by time off was time off work. Again, you can't go to weddings if you don't get permission from the boss, and you certainly can't go to Florida if you don't get permission from the boss to take off work. Okay? So that's section A, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna go on to section B, part B, and we're gonna discuss that next. Okay? So get ready for the next video. Okay, everybody. So now we're done with part A. So let's move on to part B. Now these are longer conversations, and there's only 2 of them, 4 questions for each conversation. So we're going to cover questions 31, 32, 33, and 34. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the conversation, the entire conversation to you, and then focus on what the answers are when the answers come up. For example, question 31, the question was, what election are the speakers discussing? Question 32, what is the relationship between the speakers? Question 33, what will the man do tonight? And question 34, what will the speakers do after their chemistry class? So here's how the conversation goes, and then I will tell you the questions again. So the conversation was about plans for a school election, okay? Just even the title of that was important, the word election. So it gives you a hint of what's coming up, and the questions kind of center around that. Now again, when you do this section of the test, I'll encourage you to look at the answers. Later on, I will show you how you can actually sometimes eliminate some of the answers before you even hear the conversation, because sometimes the answers just will sound stupid and they won't really match with the other 3 answers. You can trust your instincts on that and just toss that one out. Because actually one of the main strategies of some tests are, as opposed to searching for the correct answer, what you first do is you want to eliminate any possible wrong answers. This is much more relevant when it comes to error identification sections of tests and even reading comprehension tests. But anyway, let's get back to our part B. So the conversation about a school election, and it started off with the man, and the man said, "Come on, Julie, how are we going to convince everybody that I'm the best candidate?" And then Julie, she says, "That it won't be easy." And the guy says, "Thanks a lot." And then Julie says, "Oh, I'm just kidding. Actually, I think once we show everyone how well you did as junior class treasurer, you're sure to be elected president." Now, question 31 was, what election are the speakers discussing? So she mentions, yeah, you used to be class treasurer, but she says you're sure to be elected president. So that means the answer is D, an election for president. Yeah, they kind of fool you a little bit by mentioning the word treasurer. So if you said B, don't feel bad about that, okay? Then the conversation continues, and the man says, "Well, what's your strategy?" And then Julie says, "One thing I was thinking of is to hang campaign posters in all the hallways." Question 32 was, what is the relationship between the speakers? Now, there's not a direct, that last quote isn't a direct answer for it, but it's implied, because when she said, "I'm thinking of hanging up campaign posters," she means for him. So that means they're working together. But he's the one running for president. She's running the campaign. Posters are part of a political campaign. It's a form of advertising. So then they continue to talk a little bit, and then he says, everybody puts up posters. We need to do something different. And she says, let me finish. The campus radio station is willing to let you have 5 minutes tomorrow morning at 7 to outline your plans for the year. Lots of students will hear you then. And he says, great idea. Then Julie says, I've also arranged for you to give a speech during dinner tomorrow. Over 100 students will be there, and you can answer questions after you finish speaking. Now, question 33 is, what will the man do tonight? And then the man says, that means I better come up with a speech pretty quickly. How about if I write it tonight? What's he going to do tonight? Yeah, that means B, he's going to write a speech. And then question 34 was, what will the speakers do after chemistry class? Now he continues with what he said. After he said, how about if I write it tonight and I'll show it to you after chemistry class tomorrow? And the woman says, Julie says, fine, I'll see you after class. What are they going to do after chemistry class? Well, obviously they're going to review the man's talk, because he's going to write it and then she's going to look at it and see if it's okay. Okay? So that's why the answer was B. So let's move on to the next conversation. Now this one was listen to two friends talk about a television program. Okay? Now the questions were, 35 was, what was the television program about? Number 36 was, what did the man learn about barnacles? 37, why is a barnacle glue of particular interest to researchers? And 38 was, according to the conversation, in what field will the research results be helpful? So the man starts to talk and he says, did you watch Undersea Discovery last night? And the woman says, no, I missed it. Did you? And he says, yeah, it was pretty good. It was about barnacles. Question 35, what was the television program about? Well, yeah. And then after that, the woman says, and then he says, you know how they stick themselves to stuff in the ocean like rocks or boats? To stick to something is something called to adhere, adhesive. You see, D, the answer is D, the adhesive quality of barnacles. So not only about barnacles, but how they stick to themselves to stuff in the ocean. You're supposed to understand that sticking something means adhesive. Think of like tape. Tape is an adhesive. Glue. Glue is an adhesive. Okay? So then they continue to talk. And the woman says, and then the guy says, well, they do that when they're young, and then they stay in the same place forever. Question 36, what did the man learn about barnacles? That's what he learned, that when they're young, they stay in the same place forever. So that means the answer is B. They never move from one location because it's forever, right? So he continues to talk, and then the woman says, it figures, have you ever tried removing one of those things? Last summer, I tried to scrape off some off a pier. I had to give up after a while. You'd think they wouldn't be able to stick like that underwater. She means because it's wet, she doesn't understand how the barnacles stick so hard and can't get them off. You'd have to know what a barnacle is. If you don't, it looks like a clam, but it's only half a clam, and they're always on the sides of boats and posts on piers and stuff, and they are impossible to get off. And the question 37, why is barnacle glue of particular interest to researchers? And the man says, that's one reason scientists are trying to figure out what their glue's made of. It's one of the strongest adhesives in nature. So that means, of course, A, it works on wet surfaces. Okay. And the last question, so they continue to talk, and then he says, and it's a natural protein, so it probably won't be harmful like some synthetic glues. And the woman says, really? And then he says, then question 38, according to the conversation, in what field will the research results be helpful? So this is about when you hear about the word research or researchers. The man says, yeah, these biomedical researchers were talking about its possible uses. Orthopedists could use it for mending broken bones, or it could be used in dentistry. Now, dentistry is not necessarily medicine, but when he says biomedical, bio, remember the prefix bio means life, right? Biology, medical, medicine. So that's medicine, researchers, its uses. Orthopedists are people who work especially on joints and bones, and they could use it for mending broken bones. So the answer is C, medicine. Okay, so again, you feel free to ask any more questions about that after here today or later on when we're in class. And don't worry, again, we're gonna do another one of these tests in class as a practice before you take anything where you get a mark, okay? So let's move on to Part C. Okay, look at that crooked copy. Okay, here we go. We're gonna go over part C. Now this is the monologue, longer talks, okay, not a conversation, talks. And how we're gonna do this is I'm gonna read along and I'm going to, again, the whole conversation, not conversation, the whole talk. And we have 3. And I'm just going to read the questions and the answers as they come along within the conversation. The first thing to note about part C is very often you will get a question. The first question that you get for the first talk, which is questions 39 through 42, the first one is, what is the instructor describing? The next talk, questions 43 through 46, the first question is, what is the purpose of this broadcast? Those 2 questions are basically the same. This is a common question you will get in part C of this, and that means they're going to basically ask you, hey, what's this guy talking about? What is this woman talking about? What's the purpose of this discussion or talk? It's never a discussion. It's a lecturer, like I'm kind of lecturing you now, just one-on-one, just to you by myself, talking and you're listening. So the question like that is basically saying, what's this all about? Because when somebody begins a discussion like that, they just don't, stand up in front and just start talking. They introduce themselves and they introduce the topic, just like you should when you're writing or when you're speaking, for example, a speaking project. Excuse me. And so the key to this question is it always comes like within the first 10, 15 seconds of the talk, okay? So let's start with the first talk. Again, this is gonna cover questions 39, 40, 41, and 42. So it says, listen to a talk by an instructor in a biology laboratory. So again, you see it centers around university life. And the talk goes like this, and it's actually a woman. And she said, before we start our first lab, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the workbook we'll be using. What was question 39? What is the instructor describing? Well, the workbook, she just said it. So the answer is C, the workbook for the laboratory course. See, like I said, literally the first thing out of her mouth was what the talk was about. Okay, so she continues speaking, and she says, the first thing I'd like to point out is that the workbook contains a very large amount of material, far more than you could ever handle in a single semester. Now, the next question, question 40, is what is the instructor's main point? So now she said what she's going to talk about, the workbook. But what is she saying about the workbook? And she says, what you're supposed to do is choose the experiments and activities that you want to do within a certain framework, of course. And then part of my job is to help you make the choices. So the question was, again, main topic, answer, C, the students will be able to make choices about the laboratory work. She said this by 1, you choose the experiments, and 2, part of my job is helping you make your choices. Okay? So this takes us to questions 41 and 42. Now, question 41 is, how are the activities different from the experiments? Now, I'm going to give you the whole talk. So after she says the thing about my job is to help you make your choices, she says, next, I'd like to mention that in each workbook chapter, there are usually 2 subsections. The first is called experiments, and the second is called activities. In the experiment section, the workbook gives full instructions for all the experiments, including alternate procedures. Choose the procedure you wish. There's plenty of equipment available. Now, in the activity section, you will find suggestions for projects that you can do on your own time. You'll see that there is usually no detailed instructions for the activities. Now remember, the question was, how are activities different than the experiments? She told you that the experiments gives you full instructions. But when she mentioned the activities, she said there are no detailed instructions. So that means D, fewer instructions are given for the activities. And that takes us to the last question for this talk. Question 42, when would this talk be given? Now, after she says the thing about detailed instructions for activities, she says you're supposed to do them your own way. If there are no questions, let's turn to chapter 1 now. The question is, when would this talk be given? This is more using what would be called deductive reasoning. She's discussing the workbook. She's saying it's go to chapter 1. It's the beginning of the class, so clearly the answer is at the beginning of the semester. You're not going to give a talk about, hopefully you're not going to give a talk about the workbook 8 weeks into the semester after you've already been working on the workbook. You're going to do that at the beginning of the semester, okay? So that's the first talk. Let's move on to the second talk. The second talk focus is question 43, 44, 45, and 46. Now this one, the questions come and the answers come pretty quickly. Question 43 through 46, listen to a radio broadcast about sleep, okay? Now, again, question 43 was, as I told you about, what is the purpose of the broadcast? Okay, so this is a woman again. And the first thing she says is, do you have trouble sleeping at night? Maybe this is for you. So what's the purpose of the broadcast? Of course, it's D, to offer advice about sleeping problems. Trouble sleeping at night. Okay, trouble sleeping at night. Maybe this is for you. Maybe this is for you means this talk could help you, okay, with your sleeping problems. Next, she says, when you worry about needing sleep and toss and turn trying to find a comfortable position, you're probably only making matters worse. Question 44 was, according to the speaker, what happens when you toss and turn to get comfortable? She just said, toss and turn trying to find a comfortable position, you're only making matters worse. Then she says, what happens when you do that, meaning when you toss and turn, is that your heart rate actually increases, making it more difficult to relax. So that means the answer is B. It becomes harder to relax when you toss and turn. So this brings us to question 45. According to the speaker, what sometimes causes people to have trouble sleeping? So she continues to talk, and she says, you may also have some bad habits that contribute to the problem. Again, the problem about not being able to sleep. Do you rest frequently during the day? Do you get virtually no exercise, or do you exercise strenuously late in the day? Are you preoccupied with sleep, or do you sleep late on weekends? Any and all of these factors may be leading to your insomnia by disrupting your body's natural rhythm. Insomnia, in case you don't know, is something that I have. When you have a lot of trouble getting sleep, or you don't sleep at all. Very often people have insomnia, myself included sometimes, will only sleep like 1 or 2 hours a night, if they're lucky. So the question was, according to the speaker, what sometimes causes people to have trouble sleeping? So the answer is C, vigorous exercise in the evening. But she said, or do you exercise strenuously late in the day, meaning at night before you should be sleeping? People probably think this will help them go to sleep because it'll make you tired. But actually, when you exercise, your brain releases something called endorphins, and these will actually keep you awake. Okay? Ask your science teacher, but it's true. Okay? And the last question was, what does the speaker say about sleeping pills? So after she said the thing about your disrupting your body's natural rhythm, she says, what should you do then on those sleepless nights? Don't bother with sleeping pills. Okay, that's where she mentioned sleeping pills. And the question was, what does the speaker say about sleeping pills? They can actually cause worse insomnia later. So that means the answer is A. They might eventually cause you to lose sleep because losing sleep is insomnia. They're saying that sleeping pills make it worse. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to change screen here and go to the last questions. And let's get the good view here so you can see everything. See all the answers? Here we go. So last talk, same thing. Last 4 questions. Listen to a professor talk to his city planning class. Again, you see mostly university lectures. Okay, so let's go. The first question, 47, was how did the automobile affect the workforce in the 1950s and 1960s? So this lecturer was a man, and he said, today we'll examine the role that private transportation, namely the automobile, plays in city planning. City planning would be, the streets, everything, okay? Roads, rail lines, these are all part of things that fall under something called infrastructure. So he says, a number of sociologists blame the automobile for the decline of the downtown areas of major cities, okay? Like where we are right now, we're in what you would consider almost a suburb. Technically, we are in Bangkok, but we're kind of a little bit away from the real city center, which is on the other side of the river. And if you go another, Sai Song, you're actually out of Bangkok. So the question was, how did the automobile affect the workforce in the 1950s and 1960s? And he says, in the 1950s and 1960s, the automobile made it possible to work in the city and yet live in the suburbs many miles away. So this means, of course, the answer was C. It allowed workers to live far from their jobs. Because the jobs are in the city, but they live in the suburbs, and this is very far away. This is very common in the United States, and I'm sure it's very common here. In actuality, that is the reason they built the Purple Line, because of people who live in Nonthaburi, but who work in other parts of Bangkok, encouraging them to not drive their cars into the city center, which is the Sukhumvit area, everything very close to that area. So that takes us to question 48. What problem did the downtown city merchants face in the 1960s? So after they said that about the suburbs many miles away, they continue on and say shopping patterns changed. Instead of patronizing downtown stores, patronizing means going to, using those stores, shopping at those stores. People in the suburbs went to large shopping malls outside the city and closer to home. Doesn't that sound familiar? Mall Banque, Central Pinkau. Merchants in the city failed and their stores closed. Downtown shopping areas became deserted. The question 48, what problem did downtown city merchants face in the 1960s? And this was, of course, B, the decline of the number of customers. Why? Because they just told you that people, instead of going to downtown to shop, because they moved in the suburbs, they started shopping in the suburbs. So the stores in the downtown areas had fewer customers, and they started to fail. It was called the death of the urban center. This happened a lot in the United States. And question 49, according to the speaker, why are some people moving back to the city? In recent years, there's been a rebirth of the downtown area. The prefix re again, birth, to be born, right? So it means it's coming back of the downtown area, as many suburbanites are people who live in the suburbs, have moved back to the city. They've done this, of course, to avoid highways clogged with commuters from the suburbs. So the question, according to the speaker, why are people moving back to the city? C, highway commuting has become unpleasant. Traffic, all right? Why were you late today? Traffic, teacher. If any of you drive, if you're far away and you've driven on Barum Ratchathani, sorry if I said that wrong, or other parts of the city, down by Siloam, and what happens? The traffic all is going that direction towards the river, right? And that means, because everybody's coming from Sai Si, Sai Sam, Sai Song, this area, and going that direction. So that means traffic. And the last question, what assignment does the professor give the discussion groups? After he says to avoid highways clogged with commuters from the suburbs, he says, I've chosen this particular city planning problem, our dependence on private transportation, to discuss in groups. So this means, what does he want you to do? A, suggest methods for reducing dependence on the automobile. Because that, remember, at the beginning, he said private transportation, the automobile. He told you that's what it is. Dependence on it means that you depend on it, you live on it, you count on it. Okay, you can't live without it. They're saying, I can't get to work without a car. And he's telling them, he wants them to come up with alternatives. Discuss this in groups. I'm hoping you'll come up with some innovative solutions. So number 50 again, the question was, what assignment does the professor give the discussion groups? And the answer was A, suggest methods for reducing dependence on the automobile. Okay, so I hope you did well. If you didn't do well on that, if you missed a lot, again, this is brand new for a lot of you. It's a very different type of test that you've taken before. Don't worry about it. We're going to do another practice test before you take anything for any real marks. Okay? And again, right now, I would suggest go ahead and listen to it again on your own, because you have it there in the classroom, and you can listen to the test again. To reiterate means to listen to, say again, what I've just repeated to you, okay? And you can hear it in real time, as opposed to me reading it out loud for you, okay? So again, don't let it get you down. If you didn't do well, you will improve, okay? It's not an easy test, all right? But it'll get better.